All right. Hey, everyone. We are live. Welcome to the first day of the Road to Mastery event. I'm David Lee Kim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital, and we'll be hosting a bunch of really smart, experienced folks in content and conversion rate optimization today. We have someone here with us now, Els, and she'll be speaking and teaching us in a bit. For now, I'll give you a quick rundown about the day ahead of us. First, we're starting with Els Aerts, which I just learned to say her last name just now. She's the co-founder of AGConsult, talking about how to do user research. Following her, we'll have some entertainment, a magic show with Alexander Great. And then, so take a little break from work and stick around for that. It'll just be a 30-minute show. And then after that show, we'll have Andy Crestodina teaching us about account-based content marketing. So in the meantime, while we're giving a couple minutes for folks to join us, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know a fun fact. Maybe something we can share is what's a song that has been stuck in your head lately. So name where you're based out of and a song that's stuck in your head. I'm based out of Boston. A song that is stuck in my head, I don't know if it's embarrassing, but I like remixes. So on my Spotify playlist, there have been a lot of remixes of Say My Name by Destiny's Child. So it would be like a punk rock remix and an acoustic remix. So it's a rap remix, and that song's just been stuck in my head right now. I'm happy to share that with folks if anyone wants it. Els, do you have a song stuck in your head?
Oh, actually, I have a whole album stuck in my head. Last Friday I went to see Hiatus Coyote, which is
I haven't heard of them.
I think a really cool band. And so yeah, I've been hearing their music in my head the whole time.
Australian jazz funk. What does that sound like? I need to listen to them. I love
it sounds
jazz.
awesome. You have to just you have to discover them. I think they were recently. I saw somebody in Austin on the chat, Antonio. They were in Austin recently, so maybe Antonio went to see them. I don't know. Check them out if they're near you. Check them out. I feel like I'm the sort of like the hype woman for Hiatus Coyote now, but I'm happy to be that. So
have you followed them on tour at all? I know of people who follow bands on tour before.
No, I'm not that. I don't go that far. If I were to do that, or if I had done that at one point, it would have been for Nick Cave.
Nick Cave.
He's Nick Cave. So he's an artist that I really rate and that I've seen live a bunch of times.
Another Australian artist. I'm seeing a trend here.
I know. I do like Australians. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I see some folks sharing a couple songs. How about we can jump in and get started? So I'm sure you need no introduction, Els, but I'll give it anyway. So Els Aerts is the co-founder of AGConsult, a Belgium-based conversion rate optimization and customer experience company. She's been creating better online experiences based on user research since 2001. And her clients include companies you've probably heard of: Yoast, Nespresso, Carglass, and Quick-Step. And she loves helping companies and organizations better understand their customers. And hopefully with some of the things that you're teaching us today, Els, we'll be able to do that on our own. So Els, take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much. Well, that basically, David has already explained my first two slides. So awesome. I am Els. I have been in this business since 2001. Yes, I did start when I was 12. And we do work for a number of different companies, some of which you may know. We like to think that we help companies grow their business by putting their customer at the heart of everything. To me, doing right by your customers is the way to do business the right way. But let's get stuck in what we're here for today: the good, the bad, and the ugly of user research. Now, I'm a sucker for a catchy title, and I thought I cannot possibly call this talk "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of User Research" without at least like a nod to, the iconic movie and poster. I have recently realized that I'm so old that not everybody knows who this guy is, Clint Eastwood. So I have described him as sort of like Harry Styles, but for boomers. So if you know Clint, don't feel offended. Anyway, the good, the bad, and the ugly of user research coming up. Let's start with the good. A while back, I think it was 2017, this is what my friend Manuel DaCosta from Effective Experiments shouted out on Twitter. He asked this question. Hey, at ContentVerve, what are your thoughts on the need for user research in CRO? And at ContentVerve, who in real life is called Michael Agard, who is a great CRO, if you have a chance to watch him speak somewhere, please do, said, it's absolutely critical. In my experience, user research is the most important aspect of CRO. Now, of course, user research is not just important for a customer, for CRO, but also for customer experience. It's important for every aspect, basically, of your business. And thankfully, that message has sort of sunk in more over the years. This is research from 2019 showing a greater need, a greater appreciation, also a greater increase in demand for user research. And thankfully, budgets have followed, which, as somebody who runs an agency that does a lot of user research, I can be happy with. That is very good indeed. So this is all good. Why did I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly of user research then? What's so bad? Well, actually, I think the problem today isn't with the quantity of user research so much as it is with the quality. You see, I think user research is actually quite hard. It takes knowledge, it takes skill, and it really takes a lot of practice. Whereas bad user research can be downright dangerous. I like to compare it to mushrooms. Now, you have to be a real expert to tell a good mushroom from a bad one. The type of mushroom that you can safely eat versus the mushroom that you will eat only the once. And I'm not saying that bad user research can kill you like a bad mushroom can, but it can lead to making bad decisions. It can lead to you making a change on your website or to your product that maybe you shouldn't be making, or developing a feature, investing money on something that you shouldn't be investing in, and ultimately can just lead to the launch of the wrong product, period. But the problem is, and it's the same thing with mushrooms, good user research and bad user research to the untrained eye look very much alike. If you don't know what to look for, one survey looks pretty much the same as the next. The devil is in the details, like with mushrooms. So, how do we do this? How do we get user research right? Today, I'm going to share 9 tips. And of course, don't worry, there's heaps more, just not what we have time for today. But I promise you, if you get this right already, you'll be on your way to something good. Now, the first thing to do to get research right is basically to set up a research pipeline, to set up a research roadmap. There's nothing wrong with doing the odd bit of ad hoc research for an ad hoc research question, but really, you should have research questions that are more fundamental and more critical than that. I would say if you set up your research roadmap, your research plan, to focus on your big research questions, your big business questions, really. Think about, what are the KPIs for my business? What are strategic issues? I mean, if you're in e-commerce, you want to make a sale. You want to make purchasing a product as easy as possible. That's one of the most important things to do. So that's one of the most important things to research. If you're SaaS, retention is crucial. Focusing your research around that, very, very important. If you have an online business, with an offline component where, for example, you make an online appointment, but the follow through is offline, like for our client Carglass, I believe it's called Safe Light in the US, making sure that the people who make their appointment online actually do show up at that appointment, that there's no drop off there. That's really important as well. So depending on your business, of course, your KPIs, your strategic questions will differ. In that roadmap, also something to think about is your recurring campaigns. I mean, what is important for your business. Maybe Mother's Day is important for your business. Maybe Black Friday is. Maybe Valentine's Day is. Maybe every year you do something, you have a special campaign at the same moment. Also Valentine's Day, for everybody watching, it's on the same day every year. I know, go figure. Anyway, I would say when you make your plan, and you can do this, the tool you do this in depends on your research maturity as a business. You can do this in Excel or Google Sheets. You can do this in an Airtable. You can do this in a bigger tool. Depends. I would start planning, putting in your campaigns, your time-sensitive stuff. And when you set up that timeline, you know the seasonality of your business, and be generous. If you want to do research around Valentine's Day, don't start doing that in January. That is too late. Do that at least 3 months prior. Look at your data from last year's Valentine's campaign. Look at perhaps your creative, your copy, whatever you have for this year's campaign, and do your research around that. And again, do it in a timely fashion, right? I'm going to say 3 months. You've got 1 month to do the research, 1 month to make the changes, and 1 month because shit always goes wrong. And so you have some time to spare. Very important. Now, when you have your research questions set, it's important to set clear research goals as well. So for every research question that you have, I would say, and this is mostly to sort of keep yourself honest, write down these 2 things. What do you want to find out? What is it that this research will teach you that you don't know at this present moment already? And a very important question, why? Why are you doing this? How is this contributing to you doing better business? How is this contributing to you doing a better job by your users? For example, if you have a business where repeat orders are very important, like for example, Nespresso, you might want to find out why customers who have recurring purchases of the same product, why they don't set up a repeat order. Why do you want to find this out? Well, because the data has told you that customers that do have repeat orders set up actually order more frequently and stay customers for a longer time, increasing customer lifetime value. So this is a very important thing to find out, and it has a very important business goal. If you have to think a long time about why you are doing a specific type of research, that is a very bad sign. That's actually usually a sign that you should be spending your time elsewhere, that there's probably more business critical things to do. So why do you want to find out? Why do you want to find this out? Write this down for every research question that you have. This will help you also prioritize the research. Something extremely important when doing research, and something, well, a crucial set where it all goes wrong really, is choosing the right research method. And again, your research question is absolutely crucial for this. Your research question dictates the research method that you can use. It's not like, I really like user testing. I'm going to do user testing to find something out. No, I mean, I really like user testing, but you can't use it for everything. Everything depends on your research question. Now, I'm going to show you a sort of grid to help you pick the right research method for the type of research question that you have. I'm going to show you the x-axis first. Well, it sort of depends on, this is what type of question do you have? Do you want to find out why people are doing something? Then you need qualitative research. Or do you want to find out how many people are doing something or what they're doing exactly. Basically any other question but how, then you sort of need quantitative research. On your y-axis, there's the type of stuff that you want to find out. Do you want to find out about people's behavior, what they're actually doing on your site or doing with your product? Or do you want to find out about people's attitude, what they feel, what they say, what they think? Now, I borrowed this axis from an N group, but I don't actually agree with how they put everything on there. I think it's been a long time since they made this. So if you Google it and you have a look at theirs, mine looks different, but I borrowed the axis from them. Now, let's have a look over at the quantitative side first. If you want to find out, what step in the funnel people drop off most, your analytics is your go-to tool. If you want to find out where people click on your landing page or what the area of your landing page is with most engagement, heat maps are a great way to do that. How many more people click on or add something to cart in your variation of your landing page or your product detail page? An A/B test is a great way to find that out, because these are all quantitative questions about what people do, how many people do something. You need a quantitative research method for this. It's not enough to know how many out of 5 people do this. You need to really get volume for these questions. And this is all about behavior. What do people do on your website, on your app, with your product? If you want to find out what people think about something or how many people feel a certain way about your product, surveys are typically a really good way to find this out. And again, you need volume for this. For this type of questions, what do people do or think? How many people do or think a certain thing? You need volume. You need these quantitative research methods. However, quantitative is not all, right? And this is why I like this quote. Some of you might think Einstein said this. He didn't. Research has shown, I know, QI researchers, this is a British quiz show, have found out that this is actually first said by William Bruce Cameron, who's an American sociologist. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Haha. To me, that means there is a false sense of security very often in big numbers. There is a false sense of security in getting a lot of data, where, sometimes you don't need a lot of data. You need the right data. You need to dig deep and you need to do qualitative research. If you want to find out why people do a certain thing on your website with your app, then you need to do moderated usability testing. If you want to dig deep into how people really feel about your solution or what they're doing to solve this problem currently and how you can help them best, interviews are the best way to go. Sometimes you need a sort of a mix between the two. And this is when field studies can be really interesting. When you, for example, you shadow people in a B2B sales context, you find out exactly what they do, and they'll be talking to you during that session that you have with them. So you also figure out how they feel about certain things. Now, these are the both sides of the spectrum, really, the quantitative research, the qualitative research. But not everything is as cut and dry. Some methods sort of, are more fluid, fall more along the lines of in the middle somewhere, really. Like customer feedback, chat logs, an amazing source of information. A really, really, really great place to dig deep to get customer feedback. And depending on how the feedback is collected and what the feedback is about, the questions basically you can pose that feedback, so to speak, can be quantitative, but it can definitely also be qualitative, depending on what the input in that customer feedback in those chat logs really is. Tree testing, another method to test behavior. There's screenshot testing as well. So by no means is this an exhaustive list of methods. It's just to show that sometimes Things aren't as cut and dry, like it's really qualitative, it's really quantitative, especially when it actually comes to surveys, because typically, traditionally, surveys are placed in that bottom right corner. It's quantitative research and it's about attitude. And in the past, that was the case because surveys were usually done either, in person on the street or sent via email. And when you do it like that, yes, then you need quantity and it's about attitude. But these days, surveys can be pretty much everywhere because the tools that we have today make it possible to really trigger a survey at a certain point after a user on your website or in your app has performed a certain action. So you can really link it with behavior. And if you then ask the right question, usually an open question, you don't need 100, 1,000 answers. Actually, if you get input from 20 people, but 10 people say the same thing, that's already really interesting. That is something you need to look at. So depending on the question that you ask, the moment that you ask it, and the way you phrase your question, surveys can be all of these things. Now, I know all of you are looking at these slides with my survey stars and thinking, damn, that Els must have a background in graphic design. No, I do not, and I know I do not. Just surveys are a good thing. Good surveys are a good thing. That's what I want you to take away from this. And actually, that grid I just showed you, where you have all these different research methods, usually it's sort of like, how shall I put this? Your research question is rarely super straightforward in the sense that it's rarely only a why question or only an how many question. It usually encompasses both. And it means that, well, of course, you also need to use multiple research methods. Quantitative and qualitative insights really give you the best chance of solving the right problem in the right way. Let's go back to the drop-off in the cart, for example. You might, if you do user testing first, you might find out why people have issues in step 2, step 3, step 4, which is great. But it doesn't tell you which problem is most urgent to fix. You need your quant for that. Oh, most people have problems in step 2. That's the most important step to fix. Great. And vice versa. Maybe most people have problems in step 2, but if you don't do your qualitative research, your user testing, you don't know why that is. So you don't know how to solve that. So you need both methods to really come up with the best solution, which is the best for your business and to help you prioritize. Now, choosing the right research method, and again, the grid will help you if you know how to interpret your research question, right? So this is the first one. Research method, step 1, doing that research right, step 2. And again, not easy, all right? Mistake a lot of people make is not doing research with the right people. You have to ask the right people to participate in your research, to fill out your survey, to participate in your interviews, to be a test participant in moderated research. Please don't do research with people from your own company. I cannot begin to tell you how often that happens. And like, yeah, no, we'll do research now with some people internally. And then like, don't do that. It's so much more valuable to test with people that are actually in your target audience. I know there used to be a saying like, doing one user test is better than doing no user testing. User test with your mom. Don't user test with your mom. I mean, your mom loves you, hopefully. And so very often people won't be brutally honest with you and will try too hard to do something right during the user test. And that's not what you want. You want people, you want people who actually care about what you're trying to tell them or what you're trying to sell them, so that when they do the task that you set in the user test, their behavior is as natural as possible. We have a client, Quick-Step. They sell online flooring. They sell flooring online, not online flooring. How would you do that? Online flooring? No idea. So they sell flooring solutions. There's no point in doing a user test on their site with somebody who is not right now in the process or has been really recently of choosing a new floor. Because if you're not doing that, then you don't care about all the stuff that they say about the floor. But when you're building a house, you do care all of a sudden about all those details that come into choosing a new floor, making sure, that it's smooth, et cetera, making that right choice. So you look at things a lot differently than people who aren't doing that. So choosing the right people, surveys, interviews, testing, very, very important. And of course, you also have to ask the right questions, or in the case of user testing, set the right tasks. And again, oh man, it goes often so wrong here. I could talk about this all day, but a very important distinction to make is that in qualitative user research, like user testing interviews, don't ask questions that should be answered with quant, and vice versa. So you might have a complex research question. Know that you'll have to use multiple research methods to really find the answer for that. Don't think we'll just smuggle this question in while we're doing user research. We'll also ask people which version of the new design they prefer. No, because that is how many people prefer version A versus version B. That's not a why question. Remember our grid? Should be in your head. Moderated usability testing is a why behavior question. How many people prefer version A over version B? It's a how many question about attitude. You need quantitative research for that. Don't be tempted to sort of mix the two. And above all, never ask people the following. Never ask people leading questions. Leading questions where basically your question already holds your desired answer. Like, how fast would you rate our customer success team support time? How fast? So you're telling me it's fast. You just want me to tell you how fast it was? No. If you include an adjective, always include the positive and the negative adjective. So how fast or slow would you rate our customer service team support time? Or how would you rate our customer service team support time? You don't even need an adjective for that. Keep it neutral. Loaded questions, same thing. Basically a variation of a leading question where it doesn't necessarily hold the desired answer, but it holds an element that will bias the participant's response. For example, how would you rate best-selling authors X new book? All right. You really expect a neutral response after you've said, well, this is a best-selling author. I dare you to rate this book low. That's essentially what you're doing when you add this element of bias, when you load your question with bias. Don't ask people to tell you the future. That is just, not something people can do. Apologies to anybody who goes to a psychic. It is not something people can do. Nobody can predict the future, and especially not your users. Questions like, would you use our app more frequently if we added feature X, Y, or Z? Don't do that. You're asking to be lied to. Also, be careful about asking questions about the too distant past. If you ask a lot of questions that rely on people's recall, people's memory, again, the validity of those answers goes down really, really quickly. Which brings me to a funny story that happened quite recently. But before I tell that story, I just want to know, does everybody know who this is? Somebody in the chat? Is this person familiar to Tony Hawk? Thank you, David. Yes, of course, it's the Hawk. If you're not into skateboarding, let's just say if skateboarding was a religion, Tony Hawk would be the supreme deity. Now, I'm not a skateboarder, but my 14-year-old godson is. And well, when Tony Hawk was coming to Antwerp, I knew I had to get tickets. So as soon as they went on sale, I went online, I got those tickets, and we went to see Tony Hawk. We went to see him August 2nd. Now, last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, I got a survey. The venue sent me a survey. Now, I'm assuming not everyone in the audience today speaks Dutch, so I'll translate for you. Don't worry about it. They sent me a survey, and one of the questions they asked me was this: how satisfied were you about the online booking process? From A to Z, the ease of it, the speed of it, and the clarity of it. Right. Do you have any idea how many days ago I made that online booking? How many days were there between these people sending me that survey and me making the actual booking? I'm welcoming guesses. I'm welcoming guesses in the chat. Guess. Go nuts. Seriously. 1 month. Oh, David, you sweet soul. 6, Raphael, 6 what? 6 days? 6 days? Oh, lol. Okay. Oh, nowhere near 3 months. Oh, you sweet summer child. No. 237 days ago. And you're asking me not just to remember the booking, but to rate clarity, speed, ease of use separately. Okay, you might not be asking me to remember back to the time of the dinosaurs, but it's pretty close, right? There is no point in asking me this, no point whatsoever. The moment you should have asked me this was immediately after I made the booking. That's when you could have had a chance of me rating that successfully and giving you feedback that had actual value, not 237 days later. Now, they asked me other questions in the survey, and one of the questions was this. Again, I'll translate. They asked a question about the service email. They sent me a service email a couple of days before the actual event, with like, if you're coming from this direction or that direction, this is a great place to park. There's also a restaurant, yada, yada, yada. And the question is, did you find the service email useful? Again, it's actually a leading question because it has the word useful. Answering, I would have preferred, what did you think of the service email? A more neutral phrasing. But this is not my only gripe with this question. These are the answering options. Yes, useful information. Not really useful. I didn't read it. I didn't get the email. My answer is not in there. What's my answer? I don't remember the service email. Again, it was not as long ago as when I bought the tickets, but it was almost 2 months ago. So no. And this is the problem when you ask closed questions. I'm a very big advocate, even if you have closed questions, to always leave the door ajar, leave the door open just a little bit, and to always add a way for somebody to give their input. So in this case, I would add other and an open type in field. So I could have manually filled in, I don't remember, you sent me this 56 days ago, please. And this should always be the case, both for single select and multi-select questions. And a lot of people go like, oh, yeah, it'll be so hard because we'll like have to manually look at things. And yeah, you don't do surveys to get pretty graphs. You do surveys to actually learn something. So do the work, get the open input. Also for yes or no questions, it's usually a good idea to add the option, I'm not sure. Now, you might think some things are just yes or no. And very often that just isn't the case. Like we do a lot of surveys also for B2B. And well, you might think the question, are you a customer of, company X? That's yes or no. But the thing is, the person filling out that survey doesn't necessarily know that. They might work for a huge company. And they don't necessarily know all their partners. They might have just started working there. If you only give them yes or no, they won't be able to answer you accurately. So I'm not sure, I think is a great way to give people a way out. I prefer I'm not sure to I don't know, because I don't know, I have no problem saying I don't know something. Not at all. But some people think it makes them sound dumb, whereas I'm not sure is sort of the gentler way out. And again, it's these details that matter. The exact wording of how you phrase your question, but also your answer really matters. So I'm not sure. By doing this, by leaving the door open, even with closed questions, I like to say you're basically you're giving people a chance to tell you the truth. If you completely close your questions, it's the same as asking the wrong question. If you completely close your question, it's the same as asking the wrong question. You're basically asking to be lied to. So this is a great tip. Another thing to take into account is to, when you do user research, to choose your researchers carefully. Don't just get any clowns in, because this, people, it's a job. It's an expertise. If you do it in-house, don't think, oh yeah, we've got some summer job students, we got some interns, we'll let them do the surveys. No, this is not alphabetical filing that we're talking about. This is a job that requires actual expertise. So if you want to get your interns to do this, by all means, but train them first. Make sure they know what they're doing. It is not just something you can just ask just about anybody to do that. If you're going for an external partner, if you're outsourcing research, I would say look for a culture fit. Whenever we work for companies, I'm happy to do user research for like Western cultures, Europe, US, Canada, that's fine. If you want me to do research for India, China, please go elsewhere, because my expertise doesn't stretch that wide. I will advocate strongly for you to get a user research partner that is local to do that, especially for interviews for user testing. And again, this depends on who you're interviewing. It's important to have a native or a near native speaker. Native speaker doesn't necessarily always have to be the case, but it has to be somebody who can really understand the intricacies of the language, so that is not a barrier. Another very important point is to put your biases aside. Well, we've already talked about putting bias into questions and answers. Of course, you shouldn't do that. But there's a bigger question of bias at play very often. What you really shouldn't do is overinvest beforehand in the stuff that you want to do research on, neither emotionally nor financially. That means if you want to do research on whether a certain feature is the right answer to your customers' problems, don't develop that feature first and sink loads of money in there. Don't make it so pretty that you love it so much. I know this has happened when customers come to me and ask me to validate something with research. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't promise you I'm going to do that. I can do research and see whether or not, your supposition is validated or invalidated, but you can't validate stuff with research. If people come to me with that question, it's a red flag. Another thing that you shouldn't do is cherry pick data that confirms your assumptions. Very often, you want something to be true. You want to find something in the research and you go looking for it so bad that when you find even a shred of it, you're like, yes, see, people do like this, that, or the other. And then you're like, yeah, but how many? Well, 5. Yeah, out of how many? Well, 5,000. Well, so yeah, no. Don't do that. Don't go looking for that stuff to validate what you think. Also, don't overinterpret data. Don't think data is telling you more than it really is. This happened recently with an A/B test. Again, it was an A/B test on an overview page where we changed basically the type of pictures on the overview page. This was e-commerce flooring. One version was the very dry sort of like pack shot picture, and another was the floor in a room where you could see more of the floor. The hypothesis of the A/B test was we will make it easier for people to pick the right floor, and this will lead to an increase in online sales. The A/B test runs for the amount of time that it needs to run. We get a conclusive result. Variation B is the winner. Somebody says, I'm not really sure if I can call it a winner. Really? Why not? Because the data shows we got more sales and actually a higher average order value. So, and that was our hypothesis. Yes, but I've been digging a little deeper, and in the variation, that one, people actually looked at fewer product pages. That's a bad thing. Is it? Not necessarily. You're overinterpreting the fact that they looked at fewer product pages as a bad thing. It might be a good thing. It might be that they looked at fewer product pages because the overview page actually made it easier for them to immediately zoom in on the right product. Do we know this for sure? No, because it was an A/B test. It only tells us how many people did something. It doesn't tell us why people did something. If we wanted to find that out, we'd have to do qualitative research. But why would we do that? We already found out what we wanted. We have the goal that we wanted to achieve. More people are buying floors. Let it go. Don't overinterpret the data. It's not because you didn't really like a certain solution that you have to go digging for information that supports your claim. What you should do is to actively try to find data that goes against your bias. Try to find out, look, I really think the survey or the research is going to tell us this. Instead of thinking, I'm going to look for this, actively look for the opposite of that. And if that's very easy to find, then you've counterbalanced your bias. Because that is so hard to do, it's usually easier to collaborate with someone who doesn't share your bias, somebody who's in a different team, somebody who doesn't share your preference for version A or B. Now, another thing, of course, if you do research, you got to report on it. If you do research and there is no report whatsoever, then you might as well not have done it, because how are you going to refer back to it? How are you going to compare it? How are you going to take next steps? You need to report. No report is terrible. Over-reporting can be just as bad. Nobody wants to read, like a 50 or 100 slides about the research that you did. Or maybe they do, but what most people really want is a sort of minimal report. What's the research that you did? What are your most important learnings? And again, most important does not mean all. It means the 3, 5, 6, I don't know how many, that depends. But only a handful of most important learnings that are important to share with people. And of course, what are the next steps? How are we going to act on these findings from the research? What A/B test will this lead to? What new research will this lead to? What change will this lead to? That's very important. You can make a bigger document with complete findings later, but especially if you're in a fast-moving business, having a minimal report up very quickly so people can move on is a very important thing. Last tip, number 9, don't rely on old data. It's funny how nobody in analytics ever has to say that, because nobody in their right mind would go like, oh yes, let's just, have a look at our analytics data from a year ago or to make some decisions. No. But a survey that you did 6 months ago, user testing that you did last year, yeah, let's refer back to that. Not necessarily. It really pays to do important research on a regular basis. Your product, your website, your app, it changes. The people coming there, they change. So doing that very important business critical research that's based on your KPIs, that's based on your business questions on a regular basis, that's actually going to do you a lot more good than looking at that data from 6-9 months ago. Now, this was pretty bad, wasn't it? Oh my God, so much bad stuff. And wait, it was the good, the bad, and oh yeah, the ugly. There's something worse than all this bad stuff. Yes, there is something worse than all this bad stuff. And that is resistance to user research. This is Erica Hall, one of my research heroes. And I love this quote. She says, anyone hostile to research is probably benefiting from ignorance. And I must agree. Yeah. And again, sadly, I see this very often. People who have been in a position for a very long time, or people who have sort of made assertions very firmly about things for a very long time, they don't really necessarily want to be proven wrong. They don't like data to contradict them. But it is really important. I always say research requires courage, the courage, to admit that you were wrong. It requires humility. You don't know everything. I mean, I've been doing this since 2001. I don't know anything. I love doing the research. This is when you really find things out. You can be wrong about a lot of things. Let the research prove you wrong. This is what it means. You have to have an open mind. You have to be open to learning from your visitors, from your users. Now, thank you very much for spending this time with me. I'm happy to talk all things user research with you on all the social channels. Send me an email. This is, as I said, I love this shit. And I hope that you picked up a helpful thing or two for your own research.
Els, this is great. And like you, I love this shit. And all the things you described, all the bad, the ugly, I've actually experienced firsthand and made those mistakes. So fortunately, we have you to help others not make those same mistakes. We had a couple questions come in, so we can go through these, and you might have heard the chat popping off as well. So a question we have here is, should we focus on buyer personas or jobs to be done during the initial stages of research?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of personas. I am a fan of jobs to be done. Why am I not a fan of personas? I feel personas are very limiting. It's like both traditional UX personas and buyer personas. It's like one person is only one thing. And I just don't think that's the case. I think we're all, as humans, we're multifaceted, we're complex, and personas just don't capture that. Looking at what are people's tasks and jobs to be done, what do they really want to accomplish, that I find that a lot more valuable, because there's a lot more room for complexity in that. And it doesn't reduce people to the stereotypes which traditional personas and buyer personas usually are. I don't know if that
Got
was
it.
helpful.
I think over time we realized some of the restrictiveness of buyer personas. So I've found that there's plenty of pros and cons. We still find use for it when we work with clients, but in many cases, if that's like a backup. If you don't have jobs to be done, great. Let's start with personas and build from there. One thing that I noticed when you're going through your talk, Els, is I think each of those points could have been their own talk in themselves. So what resources would you recommend to folks who want to dig deeper into improving their user research methods?
Well, I'm gonna have to go with the very old school favorites. There's, as much as I said that I don't agree with where NN Group places every research method on the grid, they do have absolutely great resources when it comes, especially when it comes to qualitative user research. They've got great videos and articles on what you can and cannot do and expect from moderated usability testing, interviews, etc. When it comes to surveys, there's a lot of great content out there. I know Hotjar has a lot of articles about this. Sadly, I'm not as big a fan of Hotjar, the tool, as I was in the past, but they still have that great content. So that's a great place to look for jobs to be done. Well, Bob Moesta has written a lot about that. And also my friends Gia and Claire from Forget the Funnel also have great content about that.
Perfect. Yeah, Phoebe had asked that question, so I'll repeat that again. It was Claire from Forget the Funnel for understanding jobs to be done, and I think you mentioned another person for that.
Bob
Els?
Moesta. Bob
Moesta.
Moesta. Yeah. I see. What's your go-to tool for sending out surveys, quizzes, and assessments? From Kathy in the chat. Well, again, it sort of depends on what you're doing. We use Alchemer and we have our own. We write our own code basically on top of Alchemer because it just allows you, and Alchemer allows you to do that. It's one of the few tools that allow you to really add your own code. Because it just gives us so much data. It gives us data about where people fill out the survey, what exact page, the source, and we can really link a survey to, for example, a first click test, which can be very interesting to really make sure that the first click test is actually about the actual thing that people are looking for. So Alchemer for surveys. It's fine if you use a tool like Hotjar or like Zoho or like Usabilla or any of those. If you understand that, they obviously come with limitations. They're also a lot cheaper. So, I would say use the best tool you can buy for your budget and for your needs. You don't necessarily need to buy the Porsche of research tools. It depends. If you're doing like in-app research, again, there's other tools that you can use for that. If you're doing in-app surveys, for example, Sprig is an interesting tool. So it depends on who you are as a business. Is it for a website? Is it for an app? And what's your budget really?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing I can add to that is just after being a part of many software evaluation processes is set a timeline for how long you'll spend evaluating tools because there's so many of them, and make a decision. You can always change tools later, but if choosing a tool delays you actually running research, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah.
So I think a lot of folks who are tuning in here are sitting in marketing. And so my question for you is, what's a foundational user research project that all or most marketers should run? Maybe it's something that you found from your clients that a lot of folks tend to overlook.
Well, the survey that we pretty much run for every project that we do, we used to call it top task survey, call it an entry survey now, because we ask more questions than just the top task. But the basic questions that we asked were basically, who are you? Because a lot of people think they know their visitors, but they haven't really asked them. And Google demographics, etc., aren't as reliable as you think they are. So who are you? And what is the purpose of your visit to this website today? Please be as specific as possible. What could be interesting to ask as well is, are you a client? Yes or no? And other questions you can ask is, what brought you to this website today? Because again, Google Analytics can tell you whether they came from a different website or whether they came from your newsletter or your social, but Google Analytics will never tell you that it is because you were at this trade show, or because your friend recommended you. And for a lot of businesses, that can be very interesting as well. So running a survey to really get a grip on I used to call this the basics, and this is wrong because people think that the basics are easy and everybody knows them. And we work with a lot of very well-established businesses who don't have the first clue about these things. So I'm calling them the foundations of who your customers really are, and what they're there for, what their task is, what their job to be done is. That's a survey I would run. That's research that I think is absolutely critical for every business.
I love it. I just dropped a quote that I heard recently, is that basic does not mean easy.
Oh God, no.
Simple does not mean easy. And
oh God,
maybe
no.
one thing that I can think that applies to a lot of people with the research project you just mentioned is asking who's on your website. I've seen a lot of these intercom or drift modals on websites, and as someone from a marketing, like product management background, I'm like, what's the goal of this? Why are they asking these questions? I don't think they know who's on their website. And so that seems to be maybe the most directly applicable project here. If you run that user research project, understand who's coming, you'll know what questions to ask with those chat modals and what the different paths are to lead them down.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems so simple. But again, it's our own version of this survey. I think we took around, I can't remember whether it was 8 or 9 iterations to really come to, these are the exact questions we need to ask. And when people see it, it's like, it's so simple, it's so basic. Like, that's because we did a lot of hard work to make it this simple. That's when something looks simple, it's usually because a lot of hard work has gone into it.
I love it. And I think that tends to be often forgotten when you see the end result of things. It's not easy to get to the simple results. So Els, thank you so much for this. This was an amazing session. I think you were very honest with a lot of the approaches to user research and all the mistakes that people, including myself, have made. So we really thank you for the time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody. And I made a typo there. So thank you all, not all of them. Thank you everyone for spending some time with me. So hope to see you later somewhere online. Always happy to talk user research. Have a great time with the magician and with Andy. I'm a big fan of Andy. You'll learn so much from Andy.
He's here. Awesome. So for those who are still on